When you picture a samurai general, what comes to mind? A fierce warrior, master strategist, leading loyal troops into glorious battle, right? But what if I told you their greatest fear wasn't the enemy's sword, but an empty stomach? That's right, the most terrifying enemy these legendary commanders faced was hunger. This wasn't just about a few soldiers missing a meal. It was a constant, invisible war that could crumble an entire army before a single arrow was fired. Imagine this: you're a powerful daimyo in 16th century Japan. You've gathered tens of thousands of Ashigaru foot soldiers and elite samurai, ready to march on your rival. But how do you feed them? There are no canned goods, no refrigeration, no highways packed with supply trucks. Every single grain of rice, every salted plum, every drop of water has to be carried on the backs of men or horses, often for hundreds of miles over treacherous mountain passes and muddy roads. This logistical nightmare was called hero. It was the art and science of military provisions, and it was the single most important factor in any campaign. A general could have the most brilliant battle plan, but if his supply line was cut or his food ran out, his army would simply dissolve. Soldiers would desert, get sick, or become too weak to fight. An army marches on its stomach, and in feudal Japan, that stomach was a bottomless pit. So, what did they eat? The staple was, of course, rice. But you couldn't just carry cooked rice, it would spoil. Instead, armies carried dried or roasted rice that soldiers could rehydrate with water or just chew on. They also had miso, a fermented soybean paste that was a fantastic source of protein and salt. It was often rolled into balls or cooked into a thick soup. Pickled vegetables, like the famous umeboshi pickled plum, were also crucial. They provided essential salts lost through sweat and helped preserve other foods. The numbers are staggering. A single soldier needed at least 1.5 pounds of rice per day. For an army of 10,000, that's 15,000 pounds of rice every single day. Now, imagine a 3-month campaign. We're talking about millions of pounds of food. This required an army of its own, an army of porters, pack animals, and logistical officers whose job was just as critical as the frontline warriors. These supply lines were long, slow, and incredibly vulnerable. A small raiding party, a sudden flood, or just a poorly planned route could spell disaster. This is why many battles in samurai history weren't decided by a heroic charge, but by a clever siege or a raid on the enemy's supply depot. If you could starve your opponent out, you won without risking your own men in a pitched battle. Generals like Oda Nobunaga and Toyotomi Hideyoshi were masters of logistics. They understood that controlling the food supply was controlling the war. They built dedicated supply routes, established depots, and meticulously calculated every last grain of rice. Their genius wasn't just on the battlefield. It was in the storeroom and on the supply trail. So the next time you see a movie about samurai clashing swords, remember the invisible battle being fought behind the scenes, the silent, desperate struggle against starvation. It was a war of numbers, of planning, and of pure grit. The generals who won weren't just the best fighters, they were the best providers. They conquered not just their enemies, but hunger itself. Thanks for watching. If you found this look into the hidden side of samurai warfare interesting, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more deep dives into history. See you next time.